All right, Mr. Brent.
All right.
There he
That's
is.
an incredible session. Incredible. I do think we're seeing the future right there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, we'll go ahead and keep rolling right along. I mean, people take a break. If you need to step away, please do, because it's just two old guys talking to kind of recap this thing.
Two good-looking old guys, I have to say.
Well, I don't know about that. But I hope everybody that's attended at least, part of it or all of it these last 2 days have been as impressed with the presentations and the information as I have. I thought it was going to be pretty good. I didn't realize it was going to be this good. A lot of great information, a lot of great insight, and I really think this is going to start a trend for, at least for, I think, our partnership with ERISA on having these on a more regular basis. They may be some smaller webinars, maybe just an afternoon, on a quarterly basis or something. Whatever. Don't want to set any. Wendy's going, oh wait, no, not yet, not yet. But we'll see where it all goes. But I think we're seeing a lot of synergy between the professions that we thought was there, and has really, I think, shown itself to be something that you and I talked about over a year ago.
Yeah, that's right. I took some notes during each session just to remind me that there was a key takeaway in every single session. Whether it was your particular interest or not, there was something to be learned. And I think Jan did a great job of setting the stage of continuous learning and continuous learning together. And when you take his kickoff and Anita's last session, everything that everybody said throughout the session had a little element of in the final presentation. And the final presentation also was totally key for continuous learning. You could not, and Anita could not get to her spot without incredible learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another key takeaway I got from Jan's was, we talked in the panel about survey accurate and how maybe that's a time to retire that term because what are the numbers? And Nancy did a great job of getting away from the numbers and saying, hey, we locate the exact same stuff the exact same way, but we're using it for different things. And that decision framework of risk and irreversibility, the ability to reverse, that really gives you a way to think about some of these things. And the reason I think that removing the term survey grade was Jan had a sentence in there, and it says, how will we maintain mapping with the specified accuracy of safety of life applications? I think that supersedes the typical things we think of accuracy of positional, attribute, topologically correct. I mean, it takes everything we know about accuracy and then adds more. So, and I think that's, and I think that's where we're going.
Agree.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
I was going to say, and for the audience, please type in any kind of questions you have for us here and now, suggestions. If you think about something later down the line, info@urisa.org, info@nsps.us.com, and bye, Anita. Thank you for, boy. Yeah, she's the lights are being shut off around her. Oh boy. Yeah, if something you think of even after these sessions are over, please throw it out at us. And like Brent's been chirping in the comments, if you want to participate as a committee member or have ideas, please let us know, because it's these types of ideas, the community coming together and really trying to make each other better, make the professions better, make each of our contemporaries better. It all is a win-win.
Yeah, in addition to the construction side of things, which the Richard and Linda both did a really nice job on, the necessity of using GIS in the engineering environment, and surveyors being the ones collecting the data in this environment. I think that was another key takeaway. Because we look at the whole infrastructure life cycle. Well, we know the planning things that's always been done in GIS, but now this data collection and analysis and decision making, engineering decision making, being done. But I think it takes someone, and Anita did a good job with this term. So I wrote it down. Let's see. She said, "Do it accurately digitally." And I think surveyors are really good at that. And so she did too. But when you go back to look at that pavement analysis, or the curve analysis of ball banking, that's the new term I had to look up. But when you look at that level of detail, you want surveyors collecting and managing that data, even though it's not for an analysis that would have been done outside GIS in the past.
Mm-hmm. Great comment by Galen about the third leg of the stool with GIS and survey would be aerial mapping. I cannot disagree, Galen. I think that's something else, and that is something that I have at least on my radar with my presidency next year for NSPS, is to reestablish that relationship with ASPRS. There's all of our organizations just over the past 10, 15, 20 years have just kind of spread out and went their own way, thinking that, they were going to have their own little fiefdom to oversee. And at the end of the day, we all need to come back together to the same campfire. And so that's going to be something I think we need to seriously consider is handing them a weenie fork and saying, come back to the fire and have food with us. So, because there's a lot to eat.
It's really interesting, because photogrammetry, when you look at it, it was a really equipment oriented sport. You had to have a plane, you had to have a hole in the plane that cost more than the plane. You had to have a camera that cost more than the hole and the plane put together at times, or most times. And then you start tacking on some very serious measurement devices like IMUs, and they eventually put GPS in the aircraft, sometimes multiple GPS in the aircraft. You take all that, and it was so hard to get into. And now, for a couple $1,000, you can get some software and a drone, and you're in the business, and you're collecting data literally at the centimeter level. So everybody needs to be at this table, because all these tools are I wouldn't say they're converging, but they're certainly working together. If you wanted to do a 10-acre topo survey with a drone, you could do that. Talk about a one-man crew. You could certainly do all that by yourself.
Yep, exactly. And as you were rattling off all those things about photogrammetry in the airplane, in 2020, let's just say 2022, I can't imagine what it would cost to insure that. much less pay for the operation itself. So
sure, no kidding. I mean, with after 9/11, that really changed the whole photogrammetry business in a big way.
To Glenn's point, yes, Google Maps and navigation, our Garmin's and our TomToms and all those things. You're right. They think that, oh, well, I have GPS, and but they still don't fully understand what the differences is as far as signals, as far as the whole mapping underneath it. You're right. We collectively need to do a better job, all of us, informing the public, educating the public on what accurate and precise navigation truly means.
I think we're going to see what that truly means when we have semi-tractor trailers drive themselves. And it's interesting that surveyors aren't necessarily in that mix. So again, I think that, when you take a look at how these things are done and who's doing them, it's not necessarily, measurement is not necessarily surveying anymore. It's actually, there becomes quite an IT problem here when you take a look at, you've got a 5G, you've got real-time LiDAR scanning going on. You take a look at the 3 German car companies. Why did they buy here? Because they can turn every car into a real-time sensor. And at some point, I don't know if we're going to know where everything is, but we're certainly going to have these frameworks. Looking at those BIM models, first off, Anita's slide, the graphics in Anita's slides were fantastic, because you could just, it just looked like a real version of the scan. And when you can visualize that and you can say, okay, now I need to put this on there. And to Glenn's point, it's not just that everybody is now comfortable with positioning and navigation. We're comfortable just conceptually, we're comfortable downloading an application to make decisions, to help us make better decisions on our phones.
Exactly.
15 years ago, that human capacity wasn't there. Even though the technology was there, the human capacity was there. Now, we can download an app and we can go call a car, comes, picks us up. We pay through our phones. Those, think of the things that are just connected just to make Uber operate.
Yeah, we were, I guess a quick side story. We were laughing about that over the weekend, talking about ticketing and licensing and everything that's on your cell phones now, everything that's on this, and this is picking on my father-in-law that lives in middle part of Indiana. He lives in the 1950s. And even if he wanted to come up and go to a Chicago Bears football game, he couldn't get in because he doesn't have a smartphone.
Yeah. My late father-in-law he founded the computer science department at University of Rhode Island, and he had an iPhone. And 2 things were remarkable. Show him how to download an app. He's like, okay, I see, take it off. And then my wife, we had a hard time getting a baseball game. And so my wife hooked her phone up to the ball game and played it through the TV. And he's like, I can't handle that. So it is generational. That's what's happening. And what happens now with apps, it was the same thing happened with websites in the 90s. If you didn't have a website, you were nobody. Now, if you can't deliver your information through apps, and you're not going to, just like going to the ball game. And apps are even changing. They're so responsive now. So you can build these apps that work on that you connect to it and it works on any phone. It's not like you have to build, one for every phone. So this technical debt and backwards compatibility issues, those go away with modern architecture.
Exactly. Going back, like you said, going back to a few notes about these last couple of days. I guess even starting with Preston and Lucas yesterday, and all the cadastral stuff, building it into a database. I guess we just, at the fear of government, having to pay for and be responsible for everything. What's your thoughts, Brent, on having more and more of the PLSS, somehow figuring out how to pay for it, but having all of that information on within a cadastral system in a database? Because I say that because I'm licensed in Illinois and Wisconsin, and Mr. Kleinman can chime in on this if he wants to as well. But one of the initial questions and concerns that were raised by several of my contemporaries around here was, if you go and publish coordinates for all of these section corners that a state goes through and puts their big fancy brass caps on, why would anybody go survey that section?
That's a really good. That's a really good point. I'll address your first one on cost. First off, us as citizens pay for that data, and we pay for that data over and over and over because we don't have good access to it. We don't have convenient ways to consume it, and we know that the more data is used, the more valuable it gets. It's counterintuitive, but the more you publish your data, the more it gets used, the more valuable it gets. The more you give away, the more valuable it gets. So going to Nancy's talk with the 4 pins there, as a profession, we've created the confusion. And I'm not actually a proponent of publishing coordinates, because if you hand me a set of coordinates, you got to tell me so much information. It's like, come on. It's like, where did these come from? What's the data? What's projection? It's like, right. Hopefully I can drag it into GIS and they go in the right place. But when we publish data in a modern formats, is in web services, and the metadata is attached, we know what's going on. When we hit the dynamic natives now, and we're consuming data through a web service, we'll take care of all of those issues. Now, what happens also, particularly with the PLSS, and there's a comment in there from Nancy, but isn't the data public? It is, but it's not necessarily always consumable. So let me finish this one out, Nancy, because here's the technology that's in place to make this work. So we have the PLSS, and it's published as a web service, so we know where the points are. They can change, okay, but the points don't change. The representations of them change, okay? Nothing changes on the face of the earth, okay? So now I'm now a county, and I take my parcel map and I use those points to control my parcel map. And the BLM gets some better information, and they adjust those parcels. They adjust those corners. Now I can adjust my parcels, and we have this framework to keep everything in sync. And if we do this right, we have the deeds attached to the parcels. So we can track this all over time, and we can keep all this stuff in order.
Hey, I think we should get Linda in here to have a balance of power.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna comment to Glenn's question real quick. County surveyors, that's only county by county. They're not everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a legal precedent thing, right? So that, sure enough, if I'm a land surveyor and I'm going out and I'm looking for, this is a thing where people, it's the order of evidence of how you evaluate evidence. It's not, this whole coordinate discussion has gotten out of hand too, right? It's not, it's an order of evidence thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the lawsuit, right? It's how you evaluate the order of evidence, that coordinate thing from Brown. But the point that I was getting at is that if the county or the state or the BLM pays for those coordinates and they publish them, they're in the public record. We need to get over the fact, just like, and I'll take a shot at assessors too. It's like, it's not the assessor's data. We paid for it. The assessor doesn't own it. The assessor might be an elected official, but they don't own the parcel data for the county. The county owns the data for the county, right? And it's an asset to the county to have that information in there. And this, I just think that we've gotten caught up in this thing about who owns it too much, right? There's an accumulation of public good that happens here with digital information. You can share it and still have it, right? It's one of the few true things that you can share and keep at the same time. I can share it and I can still keep it. And so if the public sector's paid for those coordinates, you betcha they should be out there. And you know what? If they're misused, they're misused. We are not the police. We are not the digital police. When you put things on the internet, there's not a string on it that comes thinking, whoa, I want that post back, right? Can't have it back. It's gone. And I just think that's this whole mental shift we kind of have to get over, right? I just think we have to get over it and find other ways to raise money besides selling coordinates or whatever the issue is. We've got to truly adjust our mindset into this new economy. right? This is not the same economy.
No, and I think it's important to note that data drives business. If you take a look at, let's go back to Uber again. You know, Uber was not possible without companies being started like eTac and GDT that turned into what we now know as all these navigable data sets. That started with some public data that was done for the US Census, the Dime and Tiger files.
Yeah.
If you take a look at GPS, that's a government thing. That wasn't, they didn't build GPS so we could find Starbucks. They built GPS to put missiles down smokestacks. Okay, and in May of 2000, when President Clinton turned off selective availability, look what that did. Now look at some of the problems we have today. We have homelessness. We have many social problems going on. Do you think having more data out there to be used in collaborative environments is going to be beneficial? Absolutely. You know, we have, you know, we're doing some work with FEMA, and FEMA's struggling to get parcel and structure data. And it's, Nancy and I had this conversation earlier today. We think there are 67, I think there's 67, she says maybe closer to 7,000 parcel mapping jurisdictions in the country. Okay, there, you know, we can go a long way with technology and a tiny bit of standardization, not a lot, you know, because, you know, we're going to do it our own way no matter what, but a tiny bit. And we can solve a lot of those problems, make data available to broader communities to solve these problems, because government alone can't solve these problems. It takes academia, it takes not-for-profits, it takes, you know, concerned citizens.
It does.
All
And,
right.
you know, the more data you get out there, the more people are educated, the better off they use it, right? I just think that there's going to be some bumps along the way, you know, and there'll be some nefarious people, politicians, whatever, that are going to try to abuse it and do some things. But I honestly believe that, you know, transparency, the truth is, with a lot of transparency, the truth will come out. And I just think if we can get as much information out there as possible, then the land surveyor can focus on the real issues that the land surveyor is needed for: solving issues of evidence, doing smart land division, getting the boundaries correctly identified, getting the measurements cleaned up. I mean, it took us 250 years to get in this hole. It's going to take us a few years to get out of it.
Well, you know, I also think land surveyors have a role in you know, you said it during your talk, Nancy. We're all in the land business in one way or another. And I think on the land records side of the business, when we work with recorders and e-recording and e-notarizing, there's going to be e-conveyances. And we need to have some real modernization of the land records system, how we do things. Why do we have to sift through, as Earl Epstein would say, the musty volumes to find out that, you know, why can't I click on the parcel and get the chain of title at a minimum? Okay. Why do I have to, you know, the registry of deeds in most counties is a person index, not a land index.
Yeah,
it just shows who has what, right? It's true.
Grantor grantee, man, that doesn't.
It's
say
true.
that.
It's true.
Grantor
So you know, if I had my way, you know, because attorneys aren't going to fix this system. Title companies aren't going to work on this. That's where they make their money. Title companies run another word I've stolen from Nancy over the years, they run a shadow system. They run a shadow registry. They copy every document that goes into the registry and index it themselves. Do you think that means that we're doing something wrong, or there's an opportunity for government? And personally, I think it's surveyors who can lead that charge. We're experts in this. Well, some of you are. I mean, but you know, the collective body of surveyors can do this.
All right. Something Nancy said just a few minutes ago. I want to take this just a little bit of a different direction for a second. And it's because of technology, and it's because of the ability of, you know, all this data, all of these things. You said it earlier, Brown's Rules of Construction. At what point does that list of the rules of construction, does it ever get updated? And because of the accuracies, because of the precisions and the accuracies, coordinates goes up the list. and not so far down?
Oh, that's an easy question to answer. The courts will take care of that.
Yeah, that's
You know,
pretty
those rules of construction are by decades and decades and decades of case law. I did a project, and for those of you who know me as, you know, in my current role, I actually did survey for many years, and it was a tidal boundary. It was tidal waters on a river in Maine. Okay. And by the way, just to jab you PLSS folks, that's real surveying up there. Okay, we went back to the colonial ordinance on this thing in 1645, and it was revised in 1647. So what happens is that Maine used to be part of Massachusetts, and there was a gosh, I should know the case off the top of my head, but in 1832, this particular case in Maine was one of those water boundary cases. The law was exactly the same in Maine and Massachusetts, but over the years, applying the rules of evidence in Maine because of the court cases, which were limited, and there were a lot in Massachusetts, the rules of evidence are different.
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay, Eddie. Okay, I love this. Okay, because that's where we need to go. You know, if anybody wants a copy of John McLaughlin's thesis, I will send it to you. I have it digitally, but multi-purpose cadastre is the way we need to go, and and we're whittling at it, you know, at the fringes of it in different ways, and we just need to keep standardizing data.
But remember that yeah, I agree with you. I mean, John was great. He had great ideas, and a lot of people picked. I mean, and I built on what he did as well. But I also stand to say that the tech has moved beyond that. So that was a pixel kind of based system where the parcel was the basis of construction, and then everything was sort of that concept. No, right? But the concept that you have to have the legal. Every decision ultimately comes down to who owns the land. Right, that's sort of, if you look at that part of what John did, I concur with that.
Yeah. And how do you, the parcel is the fundamental, right? It is, you know.
It is.
And,
I mean,
yeah, like Earl would say, he says, what's the purpose of a multi-purpose cadastre? To be able to stand on my land and answer one question: what can I do with my land? And if you think about that, that's a very complex question to answer. You've got federal regulations, you've got state regulations, you have easements that don't show up in your deed. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So,
All right, switching gears here a little bit again. I'm gonna go back to the NGS presentation and the whole overarching thought of going to a dynamic datum down the line. I know the surveying profession is going to struggle with it. Most of the surveying profession will, just because it's something new and shiny. How is the GIS profession set up for it? Are they truly going to be able to wrap their arms around dynamic and to be able to relate between historical, archival, and a new datum?
well, first off, it's dynamic now.
Isn't there a button?
Yeah, that's right, the easy button. Well, no, just take a look at. Well, again, I'll go back to surveying in New England, where there's a bit of declination, and most of Maine was surveyed in 1800s sometime, and you get on a stone wall and it runs about north 7 degrees east. Okay, well, they laid it out as north, magnetic north. So we've learned how to make those kinds of adjustments. We know that those things kind of change over time. You can count on the technology. Now, Australia is going through this right now. So from a technology standpoint, this is being worked on heavily. And there will be some kind of easy button at some point. We have all the processes to do the work, but you're going to want that to happen more automatically. All right, more like a datum transformation or a coordinate conversion. You want to be able to have technology that you can trust. And Linda's point is exactly right. And in our discussions earlier, Tim, I know you said that surveyors have to come around someday to the notion of metadata. And that time might be now. If you want to have you know, if you want to have a dynamic data and you want your data, you want your positions to be useful over time, then you have to collect the metadata. And that's another place where GIS and surveying really do come together nicely, is it will allow you to store your metadata and do calculations against your data and your metadata.
Okay. I want to save some conversations about the young professionals for last, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I want to comment on BLM. I thought they did a
Yes.
great job.
Go ahead.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
yeah. So they, so understanding, you know, what BLM is doing with the data, and then taking a look at Preston, and then he's publishing his data locally, so you can really get, you know, your hands on a lot of that authoritative data, which I thought was really good. And then when you combine that with what's going on at the national level and the direction they're heading, I've never seen that mineral land records system before. I thought that was really cool. But I was surprised also. I mean, it's not a space I work in a lot, but there's a lot of data available. I was probing around on some of their references. There is a lot of data available for download.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff there between NGS and BLM, and yeah, it's amazing the amount of data that is out there. And like I said, I'm really curious to see how, and you know, once we do make this change to the dynamic, you're right, and it keeps you know, just what we're seeing in the chat too about the metadata. I'm really concerned it's going to be the surveying profession is going to be called in on a lot on construction sites by the construction people that are saying, I got the CAD file from your engineers, I'm trying to lay this out, and it says to go 3 miles that way. You know, and so I think it's a great opportunity for surveying to help educate the public, the construction sector, and anybody attached to the information that we provide. But we've got to get the entire profession on board. Otherwise, we're all going to look like a bunch of sillies.
Well, you know, Anita said something. The GIS is used for sharing the data out, and I think that's one thing that if surveyors wanted to get started, that would be a place to start. It's like, okay, I do my work. You know, use whatever you want to do your work. Manage it, collect it, store it, you know, in a GIS, and then share the components out that you want to share out. You know, it's I think there was an article written a long time ago, and I've looked for it, can't find it. It's called, I think Bob Samborski wrote it. It's called GIS, a profession, niche or tool. And it's different to everybody. You know, a lot of the GISPs, you know, attending this summit, this is what they do, you know, day in and day out. For other people, it's just part of what they do. You know, it's GIS and something else. Well, I'm an archaeologist, but, you know, I use GIS. You know, I got my GISP because, you know, I wanted to, you know, show a little, you know, little competence kind of thing.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Switching gears again, yes, the presentation by Linda and Richard on transportation and all of those components going into a GIS and being analyzed and used. Like I said, it just once again another facet where the two professions are coming together to really create a robust product and information, and you know, just a set of information conditions that somebody can make decisions on.
You know, that's really, you know, that's kind of the foundation of GIS. It's to make better decisions. You know, sometimes, you know, you have to collect a lot of different data. Sometimes it's disparate data. You know, you'd never just pull a whole bunch of data sets in. You know, maybe we're trying to protect some, you know, wildlife habitat or, you know, some conservation plan. Yeah, you pull in all the information you can, but, you know, you wouldn't develop design drawings and put backhoe teeth in the ground from that. You go, some of it you don't need, and some of it you'd field verify, and that would be, I really do think that that decision process of is it critical non-reversible, and what are the consequences is a good one.
One of the questions here is perhaps there needs to be more, perhaps there need to be more designations that are needed between geospatial experts, in between the geodesist and the field surveyor.
I have to say it's a challenge. Like when you look at surveyors around the world, there are cadastral surveyors, which are what we call land surveyors. There's geodesists, there's surveyors. There's engineering surveyors. There's all kinds of surveyors, and we've lumped it all into the one license. And the idea behind the model law, and it didn't quite work out this way, but was to have you take a national exam and you're a surveyor, okay, and then you take a state-specific exam and you can do cadastral surveying in that state, which makes sense because land surveying is a legal function, but surveying is a technical function. And even though there's liability associated with it, the way you lay out a road in Iowa is probably pretty similar to the way you lay out a road in Nebraska. There's going to be local nomenclature and things like that. But the technical side of that, I think, I agree that having the license structured the way it is certainly holding back the growth of surveying as a broader profession encompassing all the elements, geodesy, and certainly that's one that comes to mind. There's most of the guys that can do the most accurate positioning on the planet aren't licensed land surveyors.
Right. And those that can teach a lot of these things, so many components of surveying, because they may not have that, that necessary component in boundary in their state, cannot hold a license. So yeah, it's, and I guess that's a question for also the participants. If we were to have, say, a national level license, certification, whatever, I mean, honestly, who would be the authoritative party to deem that designation? And as many people have told me that, that could be somebody like an NSPS. It's still kind of self-centered, and it doesn't have a legal standard.
Yeah, and there's a lot. There's a lot to develop a certification. If you just track back watching GIS-CI, how ERISA formed this GISP and then formed GIS-CI, bringing in several other industries to represent for the certification to have a high level of credibility. On the, some of it could be, like the, certified mapping programs that are around, certified technicians. But I do think for it to be a license, it has to come from a state. Okay.
Yes.
For it to be a certification, that can come from a national body. And if you take a look at a good one to look at for, to answer the geodesy question, is if you look at certified photogrammetrist. That comes from ASPRS. And what's different about ASPRS than many professional associations is they actually maintain the professional standards of photogrammetry. I've been out of touch with this for a while, so I don't really know what's going on in the highly digital drone environment now. But the manual of photogrammetry is published by ASPRS, and then they have the certification. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about that certification is that you can take the stand in court with that certification. And I imagine in other certifications, you'll be taking the stand as well as as that risk, consequence matrix. If you have a certification and you get up into that, high consequence, irreversible position, yeah, you'll probably get some kind of representation in court at some point.
Just to add, my take on the question from Sean about why are we not set up like other professions outside of the engineering geospatial? Why not levels of licensure certifications? I think like Brent said, it comes down to the states and licensure, actual licensure. We could come up with whatever levels of certifications we want to, and I guess that's part of what we're trying to explore even at NSPS now with different. I mean, we already have a CST. There is a hydrographer certification. We've got various levels of different certifications, but we don't. In the state of Illinois, I literally, with my surveying license, I can literally do anything a surveyor can do, even though I'm not certified to do photogrammetry. I'm not certified to do hydrography. There's so many things that are covered under that license. And it's, unfortunately, engineering in Illinois is the same way. And it's to Dick Kleiman's question. You can have somebody that has their PE that's, specializes in civil, but somebody, okay, Nancy, yes, you're right. The insurance will be tough to cover it, but somebody could sign something that's electrical engineering or something else that, as long as they have their professional engineer stamp, it seems like it covers it all. So, that's the lawsuit down the road. We need to figure that out. I think it's become, like Brent said, I think it's become more specialized. We got to figure out how to cover that. One thing that NSPS has talked about for several years is to create a land title survey certification, because not every land surveyor can do a land title survey. They're more complicated. They're more in depth, and but yet any licensed surveyor in Illinois can do one.
It's like if you take a look at registered architects. Okay, you're a registered architect, but then there are AIA architects, the Architectural Institute. Now, so there can be multiple designations. So you could have a state license and then have a national designation that means something else. Regarding the ALTA stuff, in this world of land that we work in, we really don't have boundary insurance. We have title insurance, but we don't have boundary insurance. And when you do an ALTA survey, you've hopefully uncovered every stone and flipped every leaf, and you know everything about it, just about. Okay, there are errors that happen, but it's a pretty complete job. It's as complete of a job as any title search. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, a title search does this title search, and then the attorney says, yeah, it's all good. We don't trust the attorneys, so we insure it. That's what title insurance is about. Now, why don't we have the same thing with an ALTA survey? I do an ALTA survey, as Nancy mentioned, that liability goes to the grave with you. And then even after you're gone, they're going to come looking at your firm. If the ownership transferred in such a way the liability remains. Why don't we have some kind of thing where when an ALTA survey is done, that liability gets retired? Okay, there's a certification, there's an insurance, because your E&O insurance ends up being the boundary insurance. Mm-hmm. NSPS could have a tribunal of 5 guys that reviews these plans for X dollars, and that money goes into a insurance fund, and the surveyor's off the hook. That would really help grow the industry a fair amount, I think, because it would almost be like a land bank or a land court.
Right.
So.
Yeah, like I said, it's a lot of those types of ideas, and just kind of like the comment that was a while back about surveying GIS should have got together a decade ago. These ideas aren't going away, and these concepts aren't going away. It's whether we act upon them, and whether we do what we need to do to make them better going forward. So
yeah, and another challenge, to to follow up on that licensure, specialization, we're a pretty small community. What are there, 50,000 surveyors in the country? Probably half of those practicing. I don't know what those numbers are, but I mean, that's what I would guess they would be. And, if you're from a small state, it's very, very difficult to have the economy of scale to be able to support all the standards and all the infrastructure necessary to maintain those specialties. I want to comment on Eddie O'Brien's
Sure.
comment about what they've done. We can look at Australia, but Australia fixed their system 100 years ago. Canada's fixing their system right now. And they are going from a deed system, what we have in most of the United States, to a torrents title system, where essentially the government guarantees title. And it eliminates the need for title insurance, because if there's a flaw in the title, the government picks up the tab. In the US, less than 3% of title insurance claims are paid out, or 3% of the gross revenues that go into title insurance are paid out. And it's much less than that. Even Canada's pays out much less than that. So and that's back to the comments of modernizing our land record system. That's something surveyors could take a heavy role in. We would be able to shed ourselves of the liability of these boundary surveys, because once they're done and they're good and they're accepted, we can move on. Because the work that's being done today are incredible. I mean, the quality of the work is incredible today by most surveyors. If you compare it to 25 years ago, we shouldn't have to redo it and redo it and redo it.
Yep. No, exactly. And what Ed said then later about for Mike in Maine, we should all be under a geospatial umbrella. I'd be curious, we're running out of time here today, but if we could wipe the slate clean and start all over again with whether it's license, whether it's certification, whether it's whatever, basically some system of proving competence to be able to do the services that we provide, what would that umbrella look like? Who would be under this geospatial umbrella?
I have to say, on a side note, I don't know if you guys know Mike Sear. I've met him once or twice, but he's the guy who, I think he's the guy who does that ice carousel up on Lake Sinclair in northern Maine, and lays that thing out. It's the largest one in the world. And by the way, I fish that lake in the summer. It's a great spot. I think it comes, how to break the licensure thing. It's a 50-state thing. If you want to change licensure, I mean, that's the issue. Okay. Even the model law is not doing what it intended to do, and I do think breaking the license into components, they can all be under, this geospatial umbrella. It can be surveying. Okay. That's fine. And there's cadastral. Maybe GISPs fall under that. GIS surveyors, photogrammetry surveyors, like they did in I think it's North or South Carolina, or in Florida. You can break those into specialties, but I believe you have to separate the cadastral piece off, because you're forcing everyone to become a surveyor to go through the cadastral apprenticeship, and that's why that's why there's what, 120,000 civil engineers or something like that. ASC is 120,000 members, I think, because they allow you to grow professionally after you get a certain competence. You can, as Nancy said, you can't practice outside of your competence, but you can grow your competence. It changes over time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we could. Unfortunately, it is such a big problem, because you said, you're right. It's 50 states. And you take any of the states. If I walked into the state capitol in Springfield here in Illinois and said I want to change the licensing for surveying, I'd probably get laughed out of the building. they're trying to reduce licenses, much less take one and split it up into a bunch of other things. So yeah, I understand it is a problem on from many facets, many different viewpoints, but it's something we do need to address somehow, some way, and we're going to keep chipping away at it and see if we can't figure out a way to do it. No guarantees. We got a few minutes left here. I guess the last thing I wanted to comment on with you, Brent, was the young professionals and the conversation that was there, the conversation and the tone and the depth and context of that conversation. What's it going to take for our, I shouldn't say our respective, both professions. I do think the GIS community is a lot more progressive, if I can use that term and not be political. They're a lot more forward thinking than the surveying community as far as embracing the young professionals. How do we break this stigma? How do we break this? Or is this just a societal thing that we're just going to have to live with and try to outgrow?
I think it'll break itself. Okay. We're in a time of great technological change, and what we do is similar. How we do it's very different. And there are tools where, us digital immigrants, because, I didn't grow up with, computers and phones and things like that, where young people can do things a lot faster. They understand things in a different way. And I think you'll see companies that embrace using young people to contribute to the bigger picture. And I think in GIS, I think it's very common, because with GIS, it's GIS and something else. Yeah, there's guys that, do all the database programming and all that stuff, but usually it says GIS, and in this example, it's GIS and surveying. Sometimes it's GIS and maybe it's journalism. Maybe it's GIS and food security. Maybe it's GIS and high precision farming. It could be GIS in a lot of things. So I think that's one component. And from a ERISA standpoint, how we're handling that, this Vanguard cabinet, this is more than just a young professionals group. This is a hand-picked group of young professionals to advise the board of directors. And I think that model would be valuable in the private sector as well, and in government, of saying, okay, let's handpick, some of our future leaders and let them help us. I do think that it's going to be, I probably should pull up the slide because it's a favorite one of mine, of a quote attributed to Charles Darwin. I don't think he actually said it, to tell you the truth, but it's the species that's most adaptable that's going to survive. And in times of great change, the level of adaptability has to be greater. And sure, we could go from total stations, we could go transits to total stations, transits to the lights to total stations, sure. But they did the same thing. They measured angles and distances. Okay, we're getting into scanners. I don't know what the next thing after that is, but imagine a car it's a real-time sensor. I mean, it's just, everything's going to be faster, cheaper, smarter, better. And I really do think we have to trust our young people and let them into the conversation and give them a seat at the table in order to keep up. I think that another point of diversity, and diversity is a very important thing, and there's studies done on this, and it's not necessarily racial or ethnic diversity, it's diversity in thought. And when you take and young people add to the level of diversity, and when you take a diverse team, they're more productive and they're more innovative. I'm not sure why, but I have my ideas. One of them is like, Tim, I'm a little bit older than you. We're pretty close to the same age. We got about the same amount of gray hair. And when I talk surveying to you, I mean, I assume you know so much stuff. But when I talk to, say, somebody 25 years younger than me, I'm going to explain things in a different way. I'm going to maybe over-explain, and maybe I'll be a little bit broader, and try to do that without mansplaining, right? But I think what happens is when you have, and everybody over-explains, you're not assuming anyone knows anything. I think you pull in more information, and you make better decisions. You gain more knowledge.
Exactly. One thing I wrote this down a couple of months ago. I read a quote in a book. Gentleman by the name of Daryl Davis, and I haven't gone and seen the documentary about him just yet. But he's a black man that would seek out KKK members and convince them to quit with their evil ways. But one of his quotes is our ideology needs to catch up with our technology. And I think that's part of where surveying is, and where a lot of our older generations are, is we've got to realize the technology is already past so much of our lives that we've got to be able to embrace it all. And the young people are driving that bus, and we can learn from each other.
And
We just have
AI
to
is
be
going
more
to
open to it.
AI is going to replace a lot of those things. And you want to be the guy driving AI, not the one getting displaced by it.
Yes.
It's the first industrial revolution that's going to impact white collar workers. And it's coming. It's coming on the easy stuff right now. But if you can explain something to me, you can explain it to a computer.
Oh, exactly. Just follow the steps.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this has been a bunch of great sessions, great conversation. I'm hoping people can stick around. Maybe those that have an opportunity to stick around and have a beverage and have a little more of an open forum. I unfortunately have to take off. It's my wife's birthday, so I've got higher priorities tonight.
Yeah. Can we turn cameras on, Wendy? Can we do that? Can we just I can stay for quite.
I can unmute everyone, but I don't know if we can do the cameras. If I make everybody a panelist, I can. So let me get started.
Do that. I can't stay the whole time either, but let's get the conversation going.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll go ahead and put another blurb in about Esri's event tomorrow.
Oh yeah, so if you want to understand how that parcel fabric works, we have three presenters. The product manager, Dan Stone, many of you may know him. He's a pretty sharp guy. He's been working parcels for not quite as long as Nancy, but getting close. Another presenter is Frank Conklin of Panda Consulting in Florida, who's a surveyor. So we brought him in. And a guy, super sharp dude. He's a chartered surveyor from South Africa, working on a lot of the least squares, the ground to grid stuff, brings super technical questions, spiral questions, all that stuff. And you'll have a if you don't get your question answered, then you'll at least have the contact information for moving forward. But I do think the parcel fabric is a real opportunity for surveyors to take these individual surveys, preserve the survey record, and then I actually did a screenshot of the one slide that Nancy had on working before the title work, the recording work, the aggregating work, the data scientists. I thought that was a really nice diagram. I'm probably going to rip that off and do some stuff with that. So